We've probably all experienced it, the mysterious phantom buzz. After reaching into our pockets to see who messaged or texted us, the screen shows no activity. Then we unlock our phones and confirm what we already knew. No one contacted us, and yet we definitely felt the familiar pulsation of a phone notification against our thigh. Some might chalk it up to the very quirky nature of electronic devices. Others may think the phantom vibrations are just due to the overactive imagination of the digital generation. Have you ever wondered what causes it? A research group in the south of England conducted a series of experiments to see if they could figure out what was behind the phenomenon. They examined the many properties of electromagnetic waves, Bluetooth interference, and even the offhand possibility of sunspot activity being the cause. Nothing scientifically obvious could be linked to the familiar, disquieting sensation. They even considered the possibility of it being psychological based, but came up empty-handed. It was deemed to be too widespread to be an imaginary affliction shared by so many. With the volunteers sitting around waiting for it to occur, it tended to render all the research data void. Trying to force these unpredictable experiences to take place on cue was no way to conduct a valid, peer-based study. The subjects were encouraged to be completely honest and objective. They were only to report incidents of real phantom buzz experiences. Reinforcing that maxim would hopefully cut down drastically on the number of false positives. In the specific testing world, there are always a number of volunteers who are so anxious to help that they over-report things, all to have more personal impact on the study. The researchers wanted to ensure there were no rewards or incentives to offer false testimony. Participants received the same stipend whether they reported 15 incidents or none. After running down a long list of potential causes and eliminating all of them, the researchers began to entertain less conventional, highly unorthodox ideas. They recorded the appropriate time and location of each event for cross-examination. Researchers scoured the internet for possible connections but made little headway until a fledgling researcher stumbled upon a very curious coincidence. On a number of the phantom buzz incidents, there was corresponding data in a very unlikely place: the city morgue. Official reports showed the time of death for a number of individuals inside the city limits to be within 2 minutes of the buzz phenomenon. The young researcher didn't know what to do with the information. She wanted to be taken seriously by her superiors, but they had encouraged everyone to share all anomalies, no matter how coincidental. At the morning meeting, she elected to approach the subject with levity. Before anyone recommends that I join the psychic hotline, I just want to point out that what I'm about to say is purely in the spirit of full disclosure. I've noticed that a significant number of the phantom buzz events roughly correspond with death records at the Metropolitan Morgue. A number of her peers grinned at a cheeky pun. It was a very clever way of introducing questionable and highly unscientific ideas to the meeting. Before the crowd could turn on her, she quickly added, "I'm not saying Grandma is trying to text our volunteers one last time. I'm only reporting a significant number of time crossovers to the events. I'll let our esteemed members decide what to do, if anything, with the data." Several of the esteemed scientists laughed at the preposterous idea. The young researcher instantly regretted divulging the psychic connection, but one of the lead researchers in the team stood up for her. People, we ask for our team members to bring us everything. Everything. That's what Miss Thorne has done. When all of the obvious things fail to line up, you look at what is left. That's the scientific way. There could be a logical explanation for these unusual tie-ins she has uncovered. Let's try to keep an open mind, shall we? Astrid was very grateful for the authoritative reprieve. She wasn't looking forward to being teased mercilessly by her peers. A mid-level researcher on the team came to a desk to collect the data. What might have otherwise been tossed in the rubbish bin was actually treated with some level of consideration. It was refreshing to be supported for a change. What the next level researchers found was a bit more disconcerting. By expanding search parameters to include deaths from nearby towns and cities, the number of linkable events skyrocketed. The scientific purists among the team were deeply offended that anyone in their field would try to draw a connection between those seemingly disparate things. They dismissed the aligned events as pure coincidence. After all, people died all the time. It didn't take much to fuse the two unrelated things if you tried hard enough. Another more open-minded group within the team found the potential connection compelling. They didn't believe in a supernatural aspect, but suspected there could be a logical explanation. Over time, they were able to tie a large majority of the events with nearby deaths. It was enough to see a possible connection, but not enough to know what it might mean. One of the volunteers reported a new phantom buzz on their iPhone, and the team sprang into action. It was the first such incident after the controversial new theory had been put forth. 2 hours passed before the next official medical report was filed. It placed the time of death at the exact same minute as the most recent phantom buzz incident. Tongues started wagging as each new report seemed to reinforce the disturbing connection more. Meanwhile, the hardcore doubters on the staff grew increasingly irate. The whole research team was becoming completely polarized as the study continued. A cellular network expert was brought in to shine some light on the bizarre proceedings. Data collected from area mobile service providers did show compelling evidence of an unknown energy source disrupting their network coverage. Tower data showed an immediate, unexplained pulse after each of the official death reports. The phantom pulses were overlooked by the service providers because they did not damage any equipment and were not associated with known mobile transmissions. After the network specialists were brought up to speed, they were able to trace the vector of the unknown signals. They confirmed that in all tested cases, they originated from the nearest tower to the deceased, and then went directly to the volunteer's mobile phone. It was a huge scientific milestone. Quantifiable proof now existed of a possible link between the passing of an individual and the odd sensation that manifested itself through their electronic phones. The sensation itself was real. Unknown signals really did buzz individuals for unknown reasons. Proving there was a direct link between the pulses and the death of a nearby human being was going to be a far more difficult task. Even the most outspoken critics of the idea began to backpedal slightly as each new revelation was brought to light. With it proven empirically that unknown signals were emitting from cell towers and traveling to the cell phones in question, it was hard to deny. Even the most atheistic members of the science community accepted that some form of energy was contained within the human body. It made sense that whatever that life force was, it left the body at the final moment of death. These skeptics adjusted their focus from denial of the possibility to theories of why the phantom buzz occurred at all. They weren't ready to entertain superstitious notions that the dead was trying to communicate with the living through radio frequencies. They pursued a running theory that human life force is inanimate and is accidentally captured by the cellular band waves. That they were willing to accept as possible, but even that was a bit of a stretch to them. The study itself had already been an unprecedented success. They had proven that the phantom buzz experienced by tens of millions of people worldwide, isn't imaginary. It is a real, psychological reaction to an unknown pulse of energy pinging their phones. As exciting as it was to discover, it opened up a whole new can of worms. What was the source of the rogue signals? Were they deliberate messages sent by the newly dead? Or was it just a coincidental, involuntary aspect of the dying process? Documented deaths near the towers at the same moment the signals were sent was compelling, but no proof of deliberate act of communication. Were these mysterious bursts of energy valid proof of the life force leaving the bodies of the dead, or was it just a coincidence too? The greater question was whether it was a deliberate attempt by the dead to communicate through the use of modern electronics. Many believe the phenomenon was just random energy being magnetically drawn to the nearby cellular technology. It would be a monumental task to prove or disprove either theory. Are there any biological or family links between those who have died and the recipients of the phantom signals? One member of the team inquired. No one had been able to connect any of the deceased to the living. Even if there were a handful of familial connections between the two ends of the transmission, it seemed highly unlikely that they would all be. If not, it cast significant doubt on why the recent departed would wish to communicate with a total stranger. What else do we know about these phantom signals? One of the lead researchers wanted to know. No matter how insignificant it might seem, it could prove helpful in our investigation. A young man named Nathan Tolley spoke up near the back of the room. Our disgruntled ghosts prefer to use older CDMA technology, it would appear, he offered. There was a brief, uncomfortable pause in the conference room, followed by a chorus of nervous snickers. The lead researcher raised an eyebrow and asked him for clarification. Between the GSM and the CDMA cellular phone networks, we've documented almost twice as many phantom signals sent to owners of CDMA-based cellular phones. I don't know what that means specifically, but the ratio is significant in my opinion. If one was slightly more frequent than the other, it would be irrelevant. But a 2-to-1 ratio is noteworthy. Depending on whom you ask, CDMA is older and arguably a more limited technology. The leader of the meeting thanked Nate for his astute observation and made a mental note to look into the technological differences. Then he addressed the audience again. Has anyone prepared a chart of known personal details about the recently deceased? We need to compare gender, the type of phone network contacted, and so forth. For all we know, CDMA signals may always correspond with recently deceased gentlemen, whereas the GSM signals may always connect with the ladies who have passed. Maybe it's gender specific, or a preferential wavelength associated with unique radio frequency factors. I don't know what the answer is to this mystery. I'm not sure we will ever find out the full truth, but I hope we can uncover more of the stunning details. Nate spoke up again. Since we've reached the point where we accept that the phantom signals originate from cell towers, perhaps we should expand our scope of experts. They have no natural origin that we can trace, correct? We've been working under the uncomfortable assumption that somehow it is an unknown link to the recently deceased. I realize that is anathema to science, but we aren't far from admitting that hypothesis. Why not bring a paranormal expert to offer another viewpoint? A large group of the team gasped in unison. Parapsychology was the academic equivalent of consulting a fortune teller to many purists. It still wasn't a very respected branch of research in most scientific circles. The murmur of the crowd increased in volume until the meeting leader tapped a pencil on the table. I would be the last person here to entertain an audience of clairvoyants or soothsayers normally, but this project has taken us into uncharted territory. The best researchers go where the research takes them, no matter what. Perhaps Mr. Tolley is correct to suggest that we consider a different approach. We've taken this project about as far as it can go with traditional methods. I'll speak with some experts at the university to see if they can recommend a suitable addition to our diverse team. I expect that everyone here will treat them with the utmost respect." The following Monday morning, a respected paranormal investigator was introduced to the research team. Her welcome was cordial, but understandably stiff. The majority of the research scientists have already had some preconceived notions about her chosen field and were not going to be easily swayed. Shay expected the cold shoulder and did what she could to reassure them she wasn't going to bring in voodoo dolls and astrological charts. Eventually, Astrid, Nate, and a few other members of the staff warmed to her. Shay read over the team's research progress with enthusiasm. It wasn't every day that a traditional scientific study uncovered evidence of credible paranormal activity. She was secretly excited to be involved with such groundbreaking research. With hard work and determination, Shay hoped to win over the skeptics and play a significant part in the pioneering experiments. On the first day of her inclusion, Shay was present as the volunteers awaited one of the mysterious signals. In typical fashion, the act of waiting for something seemed to have the agonizing effect of prolonging its arrival. Hours passed as the team and volunteers waited for another phantom buzz. As a gifted psychic medium, she was expected to run over and feel any phone that went off for possible lingering traces of the unknown sender. Her skeptics scoffed at the idea of there being valid feedback from touching an object, but she quickly silenced them. The first incident occurred after almost 7 hours of inactivity. She held the volunteer's cell phone in her palm and focused after he reported the unexplained sensation. Shay was a little nervous as the room full of doubting science geeks observed her psychic skills for the first time. "The sender of the transmission to this mobile phone was named Helen McTavish. She passed away a few moments ago after a long illness. I sense that she is lost and unsure of what to do. Frankly, she's terrified." 30 mouths dropped open in simultaneous shock. Her description was so vivid and specific. It wasn't even close to the vague generalities that they expected from an avowed psychic and medium. Normally, the paranormal readings given in these circumstances are about as specific as a newspaper horoscope. Instead, Shay had offered details that were easily verifiable or refutable. It was a refreshing level of opacity in a field ordinarily known for its mystique. 2 hours later, the morgue report came in and verified everything Shay had claimed about the deceased. Everyone present knew that she had no way of knowing those facts about the victim in advance. If that didn't make a believer out of the hardcore skeptics, then her similar accuracy with the next couple of incidents certainly did. She had a natural gift that was impossible to deny. Over the next couple days, she predicted the discovery of several more departed individuals from the phantom signals. While scientists were engaged in the difficult task of theorizing how the dead were able to tap into the cellular bandwidth, psychologists on the team were troubled with the question of why. The leader of the morning meeting discussed the latest progress and theories. There was a call for input from the team members. Nate raised his hand. "This isn't primary school, Mr. Tolley. Just speak your mind." Nate sheepishly lowered his hand and spoke. "We've spent so much time proving the link between the recently departed and these phantom signals that we seem to have neglected a more important question. That being, why are these restless souls contacting strangers? Do they want to unburden their sins like a last confession? Wouldn't they rather communicate with their loved ones? Unless it's like an unmanned telephone switchboard where there is no choice with whom they are connected. it doesn't make any sense why they have been reaching out to total strangers. Also, this phenomenon has never resulted in any two-way contact. I think we need to focus more on those areas of thought. Very valid points, Nate. Perhaps Miss Grafton can offer more insight on these pertinent questions. She is our very gifted paranormal expert after all. Shay, what do you say? She was greatly startled at being put on the spot. It was a sensitive area she had been trying to avoid. But the moment had finally arrived. There was no longer any more putting off the chilling truth. Your earlier observation about the strangeness of their transmissions always coming to total strangers is a very valid one, she began in earnest. They aren't hoping to communicate with any of us. They're trying, unsuccessfully so far, to find a way to trade places with the living. It's only a matter of time.